On March 27, 1973, Port Townsend resident Glenn Bagley dropped off his roommate Althea Blankinship and her son, Jeffrey, at the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. He didn't have time to see them onto their flight as he had to get to work, so after dropping the pair off at their terminal, he headed to his job. Althea and Jeffrey were scheduled to board a flight to New York City before taking another flight to Greece. However, most people, the police included, believe that Althea and Jeffrey never made it to the airport at all. Before we talk about the disappearance of the mother and her son, I wanted to give a little background information. Althea Daly Mark Blankinship was the daughter of a Greek mother and an American father. Her parents visited Greece for several months out of every year, hence her planned trip to Greece, and she was very close with both of them. She and her mother shared an especially strong bond, though. They would write near daily letters back and forth. At the age of 23, 3 years after giving birth to her son, Jeffrey Dean Blankinship, Althea moved her tiny family to Port Townsend, Washington. In looking for a place to stay, she found an available room and rented it. This room was in Glenn Allen Bagley's house, and the two struck up a romantic relationship, as was evidenced in romantic letters family members and police later discovered. Althea began planning a vacation to Greece so she and Jeffrey could meet up with her vacationing parents. However, no records show her boarding either of her scheduled flights. Her family became concerned after Althea was late to the agreed-upon arrival date. Her mother also stopped receiving her letters in mid to late April, and based on the amount of time international snail mail takes, this would place the last letters Althea wrote sometime in March. Althea and her son were never seen again. For decades, their disappearance wasn't viewed as suspicious or unusual. Everyone believed Bagley's story about dropping them off at the airport before going to work. I couldn't find a surplus of information about Althea or her past, but I find it strange that her disappearance wasn't viewed as suspicious. I also couldn't find any newspaper articles about her or Jeffrey's disappearance when it took place, although that could simply be due to a lack of effective record keeping. Perhaps Althea was prone to falling off the map for short periods of time, but her mother did become concerned when she failed to show up in Greece. Although that could simply be because Althea would disappear under regular circumstances but wouldn't miss something like a trip to Greece. However, that is simply my speculation based on the evidence that I have found. Either way, for almost 30 years after her and her son's disappearance, her family and the local police wrote off the vanishing, seeming to do or suspect very little. All of that changed in 2002. During this time, one of her extended family members was helping to sort through the belongings of another family member. In those belongings, they found a passport, specifically Althea's passport. If Althea had truly been planning to fly internationally, why wouldn't she have had her passport with her? Records showed that Althea had never gotten another passport, so this wasn't an old one, and there were no entries in the passport that would suggest she had been properly preparing for her international trip. Immediately, the suspicion turned to Glenn Bagley. However, Bagley wasn't only under surveillance in relation to the disappearances of Althea and Jeffrey. Police were also suspicious in his involvement with another disappearance of one Esther Mae Gessler. Glenn and Esther had been married, although I couldn't exactly say when they were married or when they divorced. Whatever their situation at the time of her disappearance, Glenn and Esther lived with Esther's daughters from a previous marriage, Angela and Tara. At 11 a.m. on March 13, 1976, Esther told her family that she would be going to a hotel room to study for her upcoming college final in peace. This is unrelated to the story at large, but I did find it interesting. Esther was studying to become a paralegal secretary, and while there are many branches of law in which she might have found herself, it's a grim sort of irony that a woman interested in the justice system would find herself the centerpiece of an unsolved true crime case. But I digress. After her study session at the hotel, Esther went to an appointment with a hairdresser. Esther would never return home. At the time, suspicion was immediately cast on Glenn. However, his girlfriend of the time, again, I have no idea if or when he and Esther divorced, corroborated his story that he had been building a cat house in the garage during his time when police guessed Esther had vanished. This girlfriend would rescind her statement in 2004, however, claiming that Glenn had threatened her life. Allegedly, Glenn told her that if she ever revealed what he'd told her, she would end up in the same culvert in Quilcene as Esther. I don't know if that was ever investigated, but by the time police found out about both the passport and the girlfriend's cover-up, Glenn had moved to the Philippines. This is an incredibly suspicious thing to do, in my opinion, but let's say for the sake of argument that Glenn is telling the truth about his innocence. I, too, if accused of a crime and cast into shadow by my entire community, might consider trying to leave it all behind. Glenn would never cooperate with the police again, although the police continued attempting to build a murder case against the man until his death due to cancer in 2016. That's all the information on this case that I could confirm through multiple sources. This next bit I only found mentioned in one article about the case, although due to lack of information about the case, I thought it would be best if I included it. In an article published in 2010, someone came forward after seeing a video regarding Althea and Jeffrey's disappearance. This supposed witness claimed to have smelled fire, smoke, and burning flesh on Protection Island off the coast of Washington. Police went to investigate and hopefully find the bones of the missing people. Not hopefully, of course, in that they wanted to find bones, but hopefully in that they wanted to give these families the closure they so desperately desire. The witness who came forward in the 2010 article does believe that human bones were recovered and given to the sheriff's office, but the sheriff's office has no records of that intake. The article itself seems a little poorly written and also says that Althea was planning to visit her parents in another state. State can technically also be defined to mean country, but the phrasing in this article did seem a little strange for that context. Nothing came of this, ultimately, whether or not the article is true. I could find nothing about it other than this 2010 article and one other newspaper article that seemed to have taken its information from the first. To this day, there is no evidence, no solid leads for Jeffrey, Althea, or Esther. Please, if anyone has any information on these missing people, contact one of the numbers in the description below. Please help bring these women and child home.